That is good. Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marianne Monteleone. I'm Vice President of Professional Development, and we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to settle in on our Wednesday webinars. We have a very special guest here with us today, so we'll give everybody just another minute, and I will be introducing Jessica, and we will get on with our scheduled webinar, Wednesday webinar. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon as you join us. My name is Marianne. I'm VP of Professional Development for LIBOR. Welcome to our Wednesday webinar from LIBOR for our members. We have a very special guest here with us today, and I think I'll just get on with the introduction. And excuse me for reading, Jessica. I don't want to miss any of in your demo, in your bio. So Dr. Jessica Lautz is Vice President of Demographics and Behavioral Insights at the National Association of Realtors. The core of her research focuses on analyzing trends for both NAR members and housing consumers. Through management of surveys, focus groups, and data analysis, she presents new and innovative ways to showcase results. Jessica discusses research findings in major media outlets and international presentations. Jessica received her doctorate of real estate from Nottingham Trent University in the UK. She also has a master's in public policy from American University and undergraduate degrees in political science and law and justice from Central Washington University. We have a very special guest with us. So welcome, Jessica, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really psyched to be here. Marianne was telling me about your area, and honestly, I wish I was there in person because that would be much more fun than being in the same four walls that I've seen for a long period of time now. So I titled my presentation that the American move is really when the pressure cooker dings. And I think we're all in a pressure cooker environment right now. One thing I want to say is that I am happy to take questions. It's a little hard for me to monitor the PowerPoint at the same time as taking the questions though. So I'd love to take them at the end, but please do put them in the chat box and I will absolutely read through them and take any questions that you guys have or any disagreements that you guys see with the data that you're saying, I don't see this in my local area. This is crazy talk. I'd like to hear that too, because it's so good to hear the member feedback on both sides of the spectrum in all honesty. So I will give a warning that I am in a pressure cooker of animals right now. I have 4 cats and a dog because I'm completely insane. And I have a home office that does not have a door, and they have all decided to come and lay in this room right now. I don't know why. There's one literally on the desk. I gave a presentation earlier this morning and one jumped on the back of the chair. So maybe we will all be so lucky to see him do that again. I apologize if that happens, but I generally have no control over cats. So I'm going to jump into the presentation. And again, I think we're all in a pressure cooker. Everyone, if they don't have kids at home, a lot of people are doing virtual learning, virtual working, have aging parents at home that everyone's very concerned about right now, given the COVID crisis. But then also just knowing how the work environment has changed for everyone as an individual, as well as we all learn all of the technology that we're using and really pivoting our business practices, regardless of what your job is, to really learn new ways of doing work. So I'm going to jump into the data that we have. My presentation's a little bit different. So if you've seen a macroeconomist talk, I'm probably not going to be that person for you. I'm going to talk a lot about demographics. I'm going to talk about a lot of the changes that we're seeing in consumer behavior. And then I'm going to share some data that we're seeing back from our members too. But first, I really want to just give a landscape of what we're looking at right now. When we look at the housing data that we're getting back, what we're seeing is that we had a 25% monthly gain in sales, and that really is a historical number. We have never seen that strong of a monthly gain. And really what that follows is another historic monthly gain in sales. So we really are seeing this contract activity coming back. But what we know is that they really do follow historic drops in sales. So we're seeing this strong V-shaped recovery. There's a lot of alphabet soup that's being talked about right now, the U-shaped recovery, the V-shaped recovery, an L recovery, a K recovery, where some are doing better and some are doing worse. In housing, at the very least, what we're seeing is a V-shaped recovery. And that can't be said for all areas of the economy, but it can be said for the housing market. What we are seeing is 101 months of year-over-year home price growth. This is an unprecedented amount of home price growth. We've never seen this before. We've collected this data back to 1968, and we have never had this long of home price growth in the economy before. What we also see is the shortest list time from list time to contract that we have ever seen before. It's only 22 days. And I'll show you, this is monthly data. We have very, very recent data that we're actually putting out on a weekly basis on Thursday mornings, because we know the market is moving so fast and faster than it traditionally moves. So we want to keep a better track on it. The other thing that we know is that 57%, 3 and 5 members are saying that the market is hotter than what they would normally see this time of year. It used to be that people would want to move before kids go back to school, before Labor Day hits. All bets are off now. We don't have this particular time frame that people are making this move, and they are doing this at different times of year. But we're also seeing a lot of people took a pause in the housing market, and now they're coming back into the housing market. There's also a lot of increased demand. Either people are tired of the 4 walls, they want to buy a second home, or we're also seeing that people want to separate from the people they're living with. I'll show you some of the data on all of these things, pretty interesting stuff. When we look at the New York region, what we do see is that it's incredibly diverse. And so just looking at home price gains on a state basis, we do see that there is a 5% year-over-year home price growth, but that it is one of the least affordable states. So following California, where the median price in some areas is actually $1 million. What we also know is that it is a diverse area. So even looking at the LIBOR region, we can't say that one market is the same as the other. And that's true of many housing markets. Even looking at a metro area, I live in the DC area. You can't say that Arlington is the same as some markets in West Virginia where the MSA goes to, and it can't be the same as DC, and it can't be the same as Maryland. So we know that all markets really are the local market. What we do know, though, is that New York traditionally has had a higher share of international buyers. And that's one of the places that has been hit, where we have seen international travel drop. People want to see homes before they purchase them, traditionally, not always. And so we have seen really a retreat in international buyers on the national scale. And that's data that we've actually recently released. So let's take a look at some of these weekly numbers that we're getting back. What we are seeing with this yellow line is, again, I said that 22 days was that monthly figure that we saw last month. Right now, we actually see it at 16 days from the median list to contract. Now, there's some zip codes. I live in one where HQ2 for Amazon is in our zip code. Our market is incredibly hot. And so really this 16 days is probably pretty long if we were to look at my particular zip code. Now, some of the zip codes that you guys are in, you're going to say that 16 days is long, but some of you guys are going to say, wow, that's actually really short. So we really do see this wide berth here with this median days on market. What we do know is for entry-level buyers, for those who would be at that more affordable price point, that inventory is so tight, you're probably talking about very few days on market. Now, those who are above that median price point, the $1 million or so, you're going to see a much longer list time. The other thing that I think is interesting about this chart is that when we thought at the beginning of the pandemic, there were a lot of delays in closing. About 2/3 of members were saying that there's some sort of delay, whether that's a wet signature that was needed on a form or you need in-person inspections or appraisals, and those things are delayed, lockdowns in the state. We know that there was a delay in closing. And so you saw that bounce up, but now you actually see that the time to close has actually gone back down towards the normal median time of about 36 days. Some other weekly data that we're seeing is that the mortgage applications are actually up on a year-to-year basis, and we've continued to see them up on a year-to-year basis. Interest rates are incredibly low, at historic lows. We've been saying that for years, but truly they're at historic lows. And so we are seeing that people are coming into the market, and either that's to refi or that is to purchase homes. And if we know that purchase applications are actually a leading indicator of what we see for contract activity, we can see that we're going to likely continue to see this very strong V-shaped recovery. And we can see this in this yellow line, that V down and then that V right back up as people took advantage of these low interest rates and said, I got to move out of this situation. Real estate market, it's safe. I feel like I can have this transaction and it's safer than a lot of other activities that I could be doing right now. And I want to talk about some of that consumer mindset. So we've been doing waves of this survey among consumers, and we have different timeframes on this, but this is the latest and greatest data that we have from August. And what we actually see is we ask a couple of questions here, and the first one's on an open house. Would you actually feel comfortable attending an open house for a home that's listed for sale? Now, these are people who are active in the real estate market, small sample, but we're really trying to get just kind of the consumer mindset out there. What we see is that 55% are saying, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'd feel good about doing an open house. A little less than a quarter are actually saying about 1 in 5. They've actually recently been active. They've gone to an open house. They feel okay doing that. Now, there is a share who are saying, I need a vaccine or I need the numbers to drop considerably for COVID to feel okay going to an open house. Too many people, small place, don't feel okay with that. There's also a share that are saying, I need assurance from local medical authorities, from national authorities, saying that this is an okay activity to do. So this is an open house, but what we see here is when we think about listing activities, you actually see that this is even higher. A very, very small share, only 2% are actually saying, I need a medical breakthrough to do this. A very strong share is saying either I'm ready to go or I've actually been active in seeing a listing presentation in recent weeks. And so I think this is a very, very encouraging number for the real estate market, and it really leads to why we saw this V-shaped recovery. The real estate market quickly pivoted. They did a lot more virtual tours, a lot more listing presentations, a lot more virtual open houses, all using these tech tools, but also quickly making the real estate market a much safer place than a lot of other activities. So when we think about wearing masks and gloves and cleaning the home in between listing presentations, that's a different type of activity than had been going on a year ago. It's also a very quick pivot in real estate practices that wasn't seen in things like going to the movie theater or going to a sporting event, because those types of precautions really couldn't be taken on the level of what can happen for a real estate transaction and a listing tour. I think this is a very encouraging data that we're getting back from consumers, that they know that this is something that is a safer activity. Now, there's probably a little encouragement that it has to be done for sellers to have people come into their home. And so we're not seeing homes be relisted, and we're seeing that really tight inventory, especially at affordable price points, with both builders not building at those price points, but then also people delisting their homes, taking off the market and not feeling comfortable. So I do think from a buyer perspective, we are seeing that people are saying, yeah, I'm okay with this, and this is a good thing. When we look at data that we're seeing right now, there seems to be an urgency, an urgency to perhaps get out of where you're living. And what we see is that 39% of buyers who are looking at homes right now are actually saying, I need to buy sooner rather than later. And they're feeling a little more rushed in the process than what we would traditionally see. When we look at this data, I think it's interesting, and we asked some follow-up questions here. We asked why. Why are you ready to move right now? And we saw that 52% are actually concerned about their physical health. And I'm going to go into some data that we're seeing on this. And I know that you guys are feeling it in the New York market. We're seeing that people are concerned about density, concerned about elevator living, dense streets, overcrowding in personal spaces. So we are seeing this shift towards looking at places that do allow outdoor space, a less dense neighborhood, but more personal space within the home. So it's about half. But we also see that 1 in 5 are actually concerned about social unrest, perhaps in their neighborhood. Now, this particular wave was done in July. We switch up the question, so I wanted to add this in here because I do think it's interesting. And this wave from July, if we think back a couple of months ago, which I know is hard because I couldn't even remember April the other day that it happened, what we see is that 1 in 5 are concerned about the social unrest. And so perhaps they're in city centers and just need more personal space outside of perhaps the peaceful protests that were going on. What we also see is that 14% People are actually saying, I'm tired of these four walls. I'm tired of living where I've been living. I have to make this move. But then there's also a section of people who are saying, I am tired of who I'm living with and I have got to move from these people. So perhaps out of a roommate situation, there has been talk and fodder about perhaps divorce going up. We'll see. I'll go into some of that data, but it is an interesting phenomenon for sure. The other thing that I think is really fascinating when we look at the data that we're getting back from consumers, and this is from an August wave, we asked a lot of questions about people are spending differently. So you're not necessarily using the entertainment spending, going to restaurants physically, or spending on clothes and entertainment vacations the way you had been. Spending has really changed, and there's been a lot of takeout restaurants, a lot of new shirts, but not a lot of new, perhaps sweatpants being purchased. So we see that change. But we also asked people, okay, if you're not spending on vacation spending and things like this, entertainment, where do you plan on putting that money? And we asked them, and more than a quarter are actually considering looking at a second home. That's an interesting shift that we really hadn't seen in the data before at this strength. Excuse me. And I think that this is a really interesting market that could be happening in many second home markets, looking at these recreation type of places that traditionally have been summer months or strictly winter months, seasonal properties, that now could be very attractive as a year-round home. We asked some of our members about the clients that they're working with. And again, I think we're all in this Instapot of situation, but there's a lot of people doing a lot of online research. You have time, you're doing your online homework before working with an agent. People are taking advantage of these virtual tours, these virtual listing presentations. But the other thing that's happening is that with them doing research online, they're actually looking at considerably fewer homes today than they had been in the past. When we look back at 2018 data, what we actually see is that people looked at a dozen homes before they put a contract down. They thoroughly looked at the homes that were in the price range. They compared and contrasted. They took their time. They put the contract down. That's 2018 data. What we saw last year is that people looked at only 9 homes before putting a contract down, so considerably less. Now, inventory tightened even more last year than we had seen before. So there were fewer homes perhaps in that price range. You had to make a quicker move. You had to make the offer by Tuesday when listing presentations were being reviewed, and you had to actually go through that. What we see now is that people are only touring 3 homes in person before putting a contract down. That is considerably fewer homes. That really is something that would have been laughable a year ago, and that would have been like an HGTV joke that you would see 3 homes, put a contract down on Sunday, move in on Monday, have the house renovated by the end of the week, you'd be good to go. So 3 homes is very, very strategic, both from a buyer's agent perspective of there's only few homes in your price range. We need to make a very smart move about what homes we tour and then put an offer down on. But also people are doing their homework online, so they're being strategic about the homes that they see from a health and safety perspective. The other thing that we know is that buyers not only are being prepped, but also sellers are preparing. Half of members are saying that they're working with potential sellers right now to prepare their home for sale. So DIYing home projects, getting their home ready so that when they're ready to list, it's just a flick of a switch and not then several more weeks to actually get that home ready for sale. So this is an interesting shift here as well, really backing up that process as people are just thinking about it to help them DIY these projects. The other thing that we're seeing is that members are saying that there is a change in the buyers that they're working with. And I know, especially in the New York market, that you guys are seeing this, but seeing that 35% of buyers are actually changing at least one home feature that they had been looking for in the past. So I talked about my office with no door. An office with a door would be lovely. The home office is number 1 on the list of what people are looking for. But number 2 on the list is this yard, and they're using this yard in a different type of way. Not only is it for their own recreation and for relaxing and for exercise, it's also for like a victory garden. They want to grow their own fruits and vegetables. That's something that is a very passé thing that hadn't been happening in the past, and now really there is that rise with that sourdough starter that perhaps is now dry and gone. But now the idea of really having your own garden to be more sustainable on your own property is very popular to people. Also the pool, relying on these community centers, and having your own building where you have that shared community pool, you really can't do that anymore in a lot of places. So having your own personal space for these types of features is very, very important. There's also a strong share here of members who are saying that buyers are moving away from city centers. They were working with buyers in city centers and are now looking at suburbs, small towns, rural areas. I have to say that some of this is a continuation of a past trend. So when we look at data from last year, what we know is for younger millennials who are in their 20s, a quarter of them actually purchased in small towns last year. So we always think of millennials as city dwellers, as urban dwellers, but we know that's very expensive and the places are tight. So we have seen this trend towards more affordable spaces, single family homes, going to that. And so I think that's an interesting shift that we're seeing, essentially a ramp up, an acceleration of this trend. And the other thing, of course, is the attraction towards single family instead of multifamily, a growing share of people saying that as well. So I talked about the protests and the social unrest that's happening. And I think it's important just to really draw the line to housing and what we're seeing when we talk about the protests, the wealth gap, and really the data that we're getting back. So going into that, I'm going to show a couple slides here. And what we do see is that the homeownership rate for white Caucasians in the US is actually at 73%. And when we look at the homeownership rate for African Americans, it's only 42%. That is a very wide gap. And it's something that I think is a really fascinating trend and a really unfortunate trend when we look at this. Going back to 1994, and this is the only data that's available on the census website. I know that there's older data that is available, but that was not available on the census website. When we go back to 1968, when the Fair Housing Act was started, what we know is that the gap for the white and African American homeownership rate was actually narrower than it is today. And so when we look at this gap, we can see that this gap has widened for a number of reasons. We know that people have lost their homes through distressed sales during the bust years, that African Americans, Hispanic Americans were targeted for faulty loan products, for subprime loans, when they could have actually qualified for conventional loan products and then were more likely to lose their homes. But there's a number of reasons that really do lead into this that are quite unfortunate. When we look at the data that we see from the Pro 5 home buyers and sellers, what we actually see is that just last year, among successful home buyers, those who eventually did purchase a home, what we see is that African Americans are nearly 3 times likely to be denied from a mortgage application than white Caucasians. And these are among those who then said, you know, I'm just going to apply for another lender. I'm going to find someone else to actually move forward with this application. I do feel like I could qualify for a loan product. So these are not those who then were discouraged and then led to that wider gap. And I think it's important to note that there's a lot of other academic studies that are out there that do show this essentially 3-to-1 denial rate. When we look at what this means overall and how this really does relate, we know that it's not just a home ownership gap, it's also a wealth gap. So home is not only a place that really has been transformed in recent months as a place where we live and we work and we cook and we raise our kids, but it's also a place that really does build household wealth. And when we look at that, what we see is that the household family net worth, there really is a steep gap. And a lot of this has to do with home ownership. For white Caucasians, non-Hispanics, what we see is that the wealth gap or the net worth is actually above 170,000 in the US compared to nearly 18,000 for those who are Black African Americans. So that gap is really quite staggering, and a lot of that has to do with home ownership. So I know that we're all in the real estate industry, they're studying it or working in it. And I think it's just good for us to know these numbers and to try and do what we can to really narrow that gap moving forward for families in America. So I'm going to shift gears here quite a bit, and I'm going to talk about some of the demographic changes that we are seeing in the data and what continues to be happening and will likely really change what people are looking for in a home. Last year, what we saw is that 1 in 6 Gen Xers and younger boomers purchased a multi-generational home. Someplace for aging parents, for aging kids, for kids under the age of 18. And these families need to purchase a larger home to really accommodate everyone, and they really have different needs. What we have seen with COVID is that there's a lot of families who want to take their older adult relative into their living situation with them. They don't want them in a senior facility and senior care anymore, and they really do want them at home with them, understandably in a safer environment. Thinking about remodeling that home to really make sure that it is safe for everyone could be happening for those particular buyers. We've also seen, and I'm not sure if you've seen the data in the last couple of weeks, but Census has released new data that actually shows that for those who are 19 years old to 29-year-olds, more than half of them are now living with their parents. That is an astronomical figure. It is the highest share that we've actually seen since the Great Depression in the US, and the highest share of 19 to 29-year-olds living with their family members. There's a lot of young adults who are renting in city centers and actually said, I don't have to be wedded to the city center. I'm working remotely. Why am I paying this rent when I could be living in my family's member's home that is fully stocked pantry, fully stocked fridge and freezer, and I could just move home, go back to my childhood bedrooms. There's a lot of young adults who did that, young professionals, but then there's also a lot of college age students who either are going virtually to college or decided to go to community college this year, take a gap year, figure out something else to do because of because of COVID, and a lot of classes are online. So that's a very big shift that's happening. So not only do we see young adults, very young adults living at home, but you also see a growing number of aging parents, aging adult relatives moving in with these baby boomers, Gen Xers, even older millennials. So millennials range in age from mid-20s all the way up to 40 years old. So it's a very wide range. So they also could have aging adult relatives living with them too. So a lot of families really doubling up now and needing a different place to live. All right, another trend that we're seeing. There has been a baby bust for more than 35 years. There has been a drop in birth rates. We have not seen it as low as it has been. This drop in birth rates really is a financial decision. So we know that daycare is $2,000 a month on average for children. And so it's very, very expensive for young adults to make the decision to have another child in their home. And so what we see is that this drop in birth rates has continued. On this chart, what I'm showing is that for home buyers who have children under the age of 18 in their home, it has dropped dramatically. It used to be about 58%, nearly 60%. What we saw last year, just 35% of home buyers had kids under the age of 18 in their home. Very strong reduction. So there has been a lot of fodder that we're going to have a kindergarten class in 5 years with all girls named Pandemica. I just don't see it. And the reason why is because the job losses that have happened in this country really are a lot of millennials, unfortunately, have lost their jobs. And that would be the generation right now who would be having this big baby boom, taking the time. They're all at home. Why not? But unfortunately, we're just not seeing it. I don't expect that coming out of this that we are likely to see a big baby boom. I think we're likely to see a continued baby bust, and it could actually drop even further than what we see today. One boom we are seeing is we are seeing a boom in animals. There has absolutely been a clearing of the shelters around the country. There's been tons of articles written about this, that you can't find a dog or a cat to adopt. These are all the animals in my home. Yes, I am completely insane. But with the 4 cats and the dog, I get it. There's a lot of families who actually say, you know, it's more important for me to actually be close to the dog park, to the walking path for my dog, than it is actually to be close to good schools. And we see that among unmarried couples and single females, that it is more important for them to be close to those areas. More important in rural areas and in urban areas. And it really is a decision maker for people to decide to buy, as opposed to trying to find a rental apartment that'll take animals, and then more important for their neighborhood choice as well. I suspect that moving forward, this is going to be the year of the roommates. And that's a bold statement. And the reason why I say that is because we have also, along with the drop in birth rates in this country, we've also seen a drop in marriage rates in this country. We used to see that back in the 1960s, 70% of American adults were married, and today just half of American adults are married. So really big drop in marriage rates. What we see is that for first-time buyers, this is really mirroring what we see. We also have a drop in married couples who are purchasing homes from 75% to 53% in the last year. What we have seen is because of affordability, because it's so expensive to purchase a home, we've actually seen a drop in single females purchasing homes by themselves, which is a really unfortunate story to see. We have seen a rise in unmarried couples, and we've seen a rise in roommates purchasing homes, that yellow line. So people are really pooling their incomes in different ways, making the biggest financial purchase of their life. I think this could be especially true during COVID, as people don't want to be home by themselves anymore, are saying, I want to be out of my small apartment, out of my studio. Let's pool our incomes, find a legal contract, and actually purchase a home together, even though we are not in a romantic partnership. So I think this could be the year of the roommate. All right, first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers, this is an interesting one. We have seen this under the historical norm for a number of years now, just at 33% last year. I think first-time home buyers could have the opportunity this year to purchase in areas that allow them more space, more room, a lower priced home, in a more affordable area. And you could see a rise in first-time home buyers. We've seen it in recent months. Unfortunately, they're also being impacted by tight credit conditions. Now, one of the things that is happening is that many first-time home buyers, of course, are younger buyers in the market, and a lot of younger buyers have student loan debt. So student loan debt, one of the first stimulus packages that we saw, we actually saw that the interest rate for student loans actually went to 0%. So like a 0 interest percent credit card. A lot of people could tackle this debt and really pay down on the student loan debt that they had. Student loans also automatically went into forbearance. So this could be an opportunity for people to tackle other debt, higher interest debt that they do have, and really get their debt to income ratio in check, especially as they moved in with their parents, and really take advantage of this as an opportunity to get ahead of the factors that are holding them back from homeownership. I'm going to shift gears here quite a bit, but I think this is pretty interesting data, and it's especially important right now when we look at the home buying market in the agent relationship. When we look at home buyers today, we see that 89% are actually using an agent. They want that agent guidance. They want someone to help them negotiate the terms of the contract, all the paperwork, show them the process. When we look at the selling side, what we see is that 89% are also working with an agent on that side. So FSBOs for sale by owner is at all-time lows, just 8%. People do not feel comfortable. They don't know how to price their home correctly. They don't know how to go through that transaction and really know how to market their home correctly to potential buyers. What we see right now is that buyers and sellers today are actually putting a premium on the relationship they have with the agent. They actually know it's not only it's important to have these phone conversations, but it's also important to talk via Zoom, other technologies that allow that face-to-face conversation that has gone by the wayside as people don't physically have that face-to-face conversation. Right now, buyers and sellers are actually saying that the agent matter more during the pandemic than they actually had in the past. So these are actually active agents who are out there searching for homes. This is especially true among sellers who want to know, how do I keep my home safe? How do I keep my family safe? How do I move forward in this transaction so that I feel okay doing this and listing my home in the market during a pandemic? The other thing, and this is not an easy topic, I'm shifting gears here quite a bit and winding down, but what I think is important is that September is Realtor Safety Month. We know that a quarter of members actually have been in a situation of fear, or they have felt fear in the last year. This is especially true during open houses, during showings, in vacant properties and secluded areas. And so I just want to say, keep yourself safe, use the tech tools that you can, tell people where you are, make sure that you at least meet someone via Zoom beforehand, and let people know who you're working with as you go forward in those transactions. All right, so what's next? I think there's a lot of question marks right now. We don't exactly know what's next, but I think there are some potential changes that we can watch in the home buying market. Potentially, there's a lot of people who are used to living in small condos and small apartments. They could be attracted to tiny homes on lands right now. I know that that's perhaps a crazy thing to think about, but if there is this premium placed on the space around them outside, perhaps they even would be willing to live in a tiny home on land just to be out of city centers. The other thing is the strong preference towards vacation homes right now. If that has good broadband, maybe you keep that condo in the city and that becomes your secondary home, and your vacation home becomes your primary home. There could be a lot of changes that we see here moving forward with the workforce. We know a lot of employers are saying we're going remote for an extended period of time, and perhaps that change is afoot. If that happens, there's going to probably be a renovation of these rural areas, traditionally recreation areas that are only popular during certain months, could now become popular during other times of year. So not strictly summer months or pre-Labor Day, thinking about beach areas or cabin areas. And so this could be a very, very interesting change that we see. Also, how do schools come into play? This is a huge question mark because we know that more than 70% of schools children are actually virtual right now. Can they go and live in the vacation home right now? I don't see why not if everyone's virtual and they're learning online as opposed to in a physical place. That's going to be an interesting one. The other thing that we know is there is a huge change in tenure. When we look at past data, what we've seen is that people move every 6 to 7 years. And right now, when we look at the last year, they only moved every 10 years. That is a very long period of time. People held onto their homes. Some of them were underwater in their homes, purchasing during the boom years. Some of them had lower interest rates, and now they have interest rates that are even lower that they go and purchase a home. Traditionally, what makes people move is something changes in their lives. They have a new job, a new baby, a new marriage. But unfortunately, what we've seen is this drop in marriage rates. You have a drop in marriage rates. You have a drop in divorce rates because of this. You also have a drop in birth rates. You don't have those big changes that would cause someone to move. COVID has impacted everyone. And I think this is an opportunity where we could see a change in tenure as people say, what is the right home for me? What is the right home for my family? And how can I move going forward to actually find the right space that I can live in right now? The last thing that I'll say here is that we have a program right now called Right Tools right now on the NAR website. You can download free classes. You can actually download free publications. So please do check it out because we have a lot of really cool stuff that you can actually grab for free. And then lastly, I am one of the researchers in our department. Please do follow us on social media. We put out new information on a daily basis on our blog, and then we cross-post it on our social. So please do check us out and grab the information that we do have. And I am happy to take questions now. So thank you. All right, so in all caps, what I see is, will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded, and I will also send my PowerPoint to Mary Ann and John so that they can circulate it as well to anyone who would like to see it. If there are any other questions, I am happy to take them in the chat box.
Well, we just have some comments that this has been great, and will you share your PowerPoint? And it really has, you've covered so much information so succinctly, and everyone will want to access it, and we'll certainly be promoting it after to those who missed it. This was so informative. Maybe can you give us any information about the mortgage market, how COVID has affected that application process and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see these really great interest rates, and of course, everyone wants to take advantage. So during the beginning of COVID, what we saw is a really high jump in refis as people really wanted to refi into their current property with a lower interest rate. That backed up a lot of lenders, and they really did see this ramping up. What we have seen now is that it's still incredibly popular to refi, but we are seeing that mortgage applications are starting to go through, of course, for purchase applications as well. Some lenders have tightened their requirements for first-time home buyers, especially asking for a higher interest or a higher down payment and qualifying a higher credit score. And so that's difficult for first-time home buyers to enter. But we are seeing that there are lenders out there, of course, that are available for first-time home buyers to be able to take advantage of this too.
That's great. We do have a question, and great presentation. Given the stats and trends, what is your outlook for the market the next 24 to 48 months out?
Okay, so 48 months is a long time. Um, so what we do see is through the end of the year is there's a lot of buyers, there's a lot of buyer demand. We're expecting home prices to continue increasing through the end of the year. We do expect that interest rates will continue to stay low. The Fed has said that they're not even thinking about changing it. So truly, we do see that that's encouraging for buyers who do want to make this change. I think the big question mark that's out there for a lot of markets right now is the jobs figures. For New York, we have seen that there has been some job losses, but you are seeing that places are rehiring. That's the big question mark. And so if the labor market continues to trend in a positive direction, you're going to see this demand for housing continue. There's been a lot of chatter too about this K-shaped recovery. So people who are doing really well are doing really well. And so they go in, they can purchase that second home or the different property and make that change. I expect that that likely is true when it comes to the real estate market, that those who are recovering are continue to recover and really can make that trade in the real estate market.
Bottom line is, it's a great time to buy a home.
Absolutely. If you and you should definitely refi if you haven't.
Yeah, yes. And let's see, should we be concerned with reduced demand post 2020 and oversupply?
No, there's no concern for oversupply for sure. We definitely have this reduced inventory of homes. And then I see the follow-up question here about the New York City and the record vacancies. I think there's always going to be a demand for dynamic city centers like New York City. There's a lot of people who will always want to live in New York and Boston, in DC and London. These are city centers that you really can't have the opportunity to have the amenities that they do provide. I know that there's a lot of people who are saying I need more space, but I also think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say I'm going to hold on to this property in the city center and purchase another space as well. And it could be that opportunity for first-time home buyers and for home buyers who have been wanting to get into the New York market to now finally be able to. So I think that there likely is going to be, yes, a comeback for these markets. But I think that there is a certain aspect of people's behavior right now that is saying, COVID was terrifying. It is terrifying. And I need more space, at least for a temporary basis for me and my family.
Right. As we spoke, that's the rental market that just exploded. You know, we were talking about that before we started. Well, that seems to be it. As far as questions, you covered all of them, and it was so incredibly informative, and we thank you so much. As soon as I reached out to you, you were so quick to respond, and everybody's putting thank you, and it was excellent. We really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
how can we follow? How can listeners follow again?
Yeah, absolutely. So please do follow us on social media because we really do have amazing researchers who are putting cool stuff out really on a daily basis. So please do follow us along, and all the new information will be cross-posted along these.
Great. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.